Parsha 101, Parshas Balak. This week's Torah portion begins where last week's Torah portion ended off. The Jewish people, Moshe just defeated the king Sichon and Og, big giants, and Balak, Vayar Balak ben Tzipor, as called Asher Asa Yisrael Lamori. This is the first verse of the Torah portion. Balak sees what's going on, and now he's getting a little bit nervous. Even though the Jewish people, Balak was part of Midian, part of Moab, he was appointed king of Moab, and the Jewish people were not going to conquer that land. Remember, they were supposed to go around the lands of Moab. And still, Balak, not acting necessarily like a true king should, started instilling fear within the people and say, oh, we better watch out for these Jewish people, got to take care of them before they come after us, sort of thing. Now, Moab and Midian were longtime enemies. But in this story, there's something unique going on, that they became friends to battle those who they hated even more than each other, the Jewish people. Balak knew that the Jewish people had a spiritual power that would be greater than the military might that they might have, and because this is the trait of the Jewish people, is prayer and connection to God, etc. And so he said, okay, I'm going to try to conquer them, not with military might, but in a spiritual kind of sense. So he sent for the great prophet Bilaam to come and curse the Jewish people. Bilaam specifically, well, he had a name for himself, but he had also said a prophecy about Balak becoming king, so he had trusted him. So he sends a delegation, and they bring all the little tricks of magic, all the tools of magic with them, and Balak says to Bilaam to say, hey, come curse. And Bilaam says, stay here tonight, I'm going to let you know what God says. There's the idea that, especially for someone like Bilaam, God would only come to him at nighttime because he didn't really want to be there, and so he wasn't just going to get these regular visions. There's also a whole general idea about who was Bilaam, why was Bilaam given such power, etc., etc. Now, this thing that the nations of the world, when they'd be accused for certain sort of behaviors, they'd say, what do you want from us? You gave the Jewish people a Moses. Of course they did what they were supposed to do. So God gave them someone who could have been a great man of great stature, Bilaam, and this is what they turned. They come to him now for cursing. He wasn't exactly the paradigm of good behavior. So that night, the delegation that's made up of people from Moab and Midian that Balak sent, they stay there, and Bilaam gets his vision. God comes upon him, he gets his vision, and God's like, oh, who are these people? And Bilaam's like, well, these are the king. Like, you might not think me worthy, but the king thinks me worthy. Can I go? Oh, please, can I go to curse the Jewish people? And God's like, no. And so Bilaam's like, fine, I'll curse them from here. And God's no. Said, if you don't want me to curse them, I'll bless them. And God's like, also no. Just no. So the next day, Bilaam tells the delegation, I can't go with you, trying to make it sound like you are not worthy enough for me to be bothered with. And not that God doesn't let me. So Balak sent a higher level of dignitaries. And Bill's making these speeches like, Balak could give me all the gold and silver from his palace, and I still can't transgress the word of God, which is his way of saying, I want all the money and all the power and all the everything. So finally, the last delegation to come, he says, okay, stay here and we'll see what can be done. And God tells him, fine, you could go, but you should know that you're only going to do whatever I let you do. Okay, so, you're being persistent here, but just you have been warned. And Bilaam was so excited that he got up early and he saddles his own donkey and he's trying to show his eagerness, etc. And God tells him, like, you're trying to, what are you trying to do here? Before you, Abraham, when he had the test of that Kedas Yitzchak of sacrificing his son, he woke up early, he saddled his own donkey also. So stop thinking that you're going to be that your behaviors have real significance to them in that regard. So he sets out very eagerly, and on the way, he's riding his donkey, the famous donkey, and he's got this delegation going with him. And all of a sudden, there's an angel that stands in the middle of the path. Now, there's an idea that because animals have a less sophisticated kind of consciousness, they can almost handle seeing some higher levels of spirituality, because in a way they can't process it as much as a human could, which is why a human can't handle it as much. So the donkey sees the angel there, and he goes off the path, and he goes into the field or something. So Bilaam beats the donkey. He said, get back on the road. So they go again, and they keep traveling, and they end up in this vineyard. It's got these fences on both sides. And the angels appear. The angel's got a sword in hand. The donkey tries to go around and kind of pushes Bilaam's foot into the fence. It's a very tight squeeze. Bilaam gets all set, beats the donkey, get back in the way. And they finally come to this one place. It was a narrow kind of lane where there's nowhere to turn. So the donkey just crouches down underneath Bilaam. And Bilaam starts beating the dumb donkey and get back on the road. He said, if I only had a sword in my hand, I'd kill you. Which is, of course, a very embarrassing thing, because here he's going now to curse an entire people, and also on a donkey misbehaving, and you need a sword? The mighty Bilaam. Anyway, he gets into an argument now with the donkey. And the donkey's like, "Why do you keep hitting me? I've been your faithful companion all this time." Which some of the commentaries say actually refers to bestiality also. That's what was Bilam's kind of thing, which, yeah, okay. And they're going back and forth, and eventually um, Bilam's eyes are open, and he can see the angel standing there. And he prostrates before the angel. The angel actually eventually he kills the donkey, because you can't have this talking, walking donkey walking around anymore. Um, but the angel also says, "Why are you beating your donkey?" Um, and Bilam's trying to be the smart aleck of like, God told me that I could go, and all of a sudden an angel comes and stands here. You know when the last time this happened? Abraham, he was supposed to sacrifice his son, and then an angel came and stopped him. So what's the deal here? It's like, okay, stop it. Stop with your cheek over here, younger old man ish. So Bilam finally says, okay, to the angel, am I supposed to go back? And the angel's like, look, you want to go, you could go, but just realize whatever God, you're not going to say anything that God doesn't let you say. So Bilam so foolishly, yeah, he doesn't know the end of the story like we do, but he goes on. So Bilam finally arrives, and Balak comes out to greet him. There's a whole to do, and Bilam kind of warns that, okay, fine, whatever, and just know God says that whatever God says, that's what I'm going to say, and God's going to be in charge of whatever my speech is going to be. So now they go to this place of Kiras Chotos, which is they go up on this mountain top, and from there they could sort of see part of the camp of the Jewish people, and they make this whole thing. Bilam's like, I need to have these 7 altars and these 7 bulls and these 7 rams, and do this whole sacrifice for what's going to occur, and then he kind of goes off. He's got to go off to meditate, to get in the zone, kind of. And it says Vayikar Elokim, that God happened upon him. Of course, God knew he was there and everything like that, and God's coming to speak with him, but God's not exactly impressed with his behavior right now. He doesn't exactly want to be hanging out with him. So that's why it's Vayikar. It's kind of like a derogatory term that's being used, like a belittlement term. And Bilam's like, look, God, look what I have for you. I have these altars for you. Da 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 da. And obviously, God's not exactly impressed with his sacrifices. He says, okay, go back, tell Balak, then the dignitaries, and this is what you're going to say. And there's a whole blessing that's going to occur. A lot of different things, but some of it is Bilam saying, how can I curse who God has not cursed? I can't anger who he's not angered. And these people, they're sturdy as the mountain peaks and the hills, which is kind of a Chassidic interpretation. It's a reference that there was this great level of devotion of Mesiras Nefesh, even to the level of sacrifice that the forefathers portrayed. And because it was so much a part of them, it became part of the DNA of the Jewish people and was passed on for generations. And it's still in our DNA today. It's in the DNA of every Jewish person. And the sturdiness of the mountain peaks and the hills, etc., is referring to the persistence of this trait. Because usually a trait doesn't persist, it weakens over time. And instead, this is a trait that has persisted all throughout the generations. It says, and I'm Levada Yishkon, this is a nation that dwells alone, that's going to dwell alone, in the sense of what their spiritual mission is going to be, and in the rightness of what their spiritual mission is going to be. They've got Mimana for Yaakov. It says, who can count the dust of Yaakov? But it's saying there's treasures that are deep within this people. There's a deep love and fear, oh God, that they have with him. And these people, there's an essential quality over like a mere quantity to them. A lot of very nice things are being said. And Balak is like, what have you just done? This is not what I hired you for. This is not why we're here. And Balaam's like, look, I warned you. I said, oh, what God said. Okay, fine. You know what? We're going to go to a different place. We need to change the location. We need to change the view. So they go to another place. It's like this place at the lookout to the peak of the summit. They say it was near Har Nevo there because Balak kind of sensed through astrological means that there was going to be something not good was going to occur in Har Nevo, which actually Har Nevo is where Moshe is buried. So he got the vibe right, but he didn't get the reason for it correct. So again, they go through the whole 7 altar things again, and Bilam goes off to get in the zone to meditate and hope that God happens upon him again, using that language. And this time, Bilam's like, wait a second, I got a feeling that this might not be a cursing time right now. He didn't, but God basically compelled him to go back. He says, you're not getting out of this. Go back to Balak, and that's what you got to say. So Balak was like, okay, what did God say this time? And Bilam's like, stand and listen, you. And he said, on a whole blessing again. God's with them. I've looked and I found no sinners among them, etc., etc., etc. Going on, the whole thing. And Balak was like, okay, just stop speaking. Okay, that enough. That you're not cursing them, but stop with these blessings already. And Balaam's like, hey, look, I told you that whatever God says, that's what it's going to be. So Balak says last time, he's like, that's it. We need a new location, new location. So they go to a new location again, another place that they're going to, and they do the whole seven altar thing again. This time, Bilaam, he's like, I'm not even going to try to get in the zone meditation thing and see if God's going to come to me, because I kind of see what the plan, I see a pattern here. I see what the plan is, and I'm not even going, whatever. So he goes, he stands off, he looks over the camp, whatever, and he had a full intention of trying to, like, maybe I could sneak a curse in here or something. And he sees the way the camp is laid out, and what he sees totally changes his mind, and he now goes and voluntarily blesses the Jewish people. So what does he see? We have this, it's actually part of our prayer. Every day, the morning prayer starts with this. Matovo Ahol Yaakov. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob. Right? Because what he sees is that every tribe was set up in a very orderly manner, in the sense that because they could identify which tribe each person was a part of, it spoke to the marital fidelity of the Jewish people. Not only that, but the way that the tents were set up, no opening looked directly into another opening. So you couldn't just look into somebody else's tent. And this was such a small detail of modesty that they were particular about, and that was left a great impression upon Bilaam. And then he goes and he says this whole blessing: the kingdom is going to be exalted, God is going to defeat their enemies, all those who bless you will be blessed, and all those who curse you will be cursed, the whole thing. And now, of course, Balak is just like, enough. I asked you to curse these people and you bless them 3 times. Like, we are done here. And Bill's like, yeah, whatever. You know what? I'm leaving. I'm going. Like, it's not happening. But I'm going to give you a plan instead, something that you could enact, and you could you could cause them to sin, and that will be their undoing. Also, by the way, while I'm here, while we're still here right now, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen in the end of days. And he goes through, I behold this, but it's not going to happen yet. Eventually Moab, these lands of Moab will be conquered, and he gives a prophecy about King David, and he talks about how Edom, which is Rome, kind of descends from Edom, that they will eventually be conquered and they will fall. He gives a full prophecy about the Messianic times, what's going to happen to all the nations, what's going to be their end, and how the Jewish people will thrive and endure, etc. So we actually have, ironically, from Bilaam, a great Messianic prophecy within the 5 books of the Torah coming from him. So after that, he goes on his way, and that's the end of Bilaam. But he did leave Balak with a plan, and they're now going to put the plan into action. What the plan of action was going to be, they were going to try to cause this whole seduction, because they know that God would judge very harshly in promiscuous matters, to say. So the Jewish people are camped in the plains of Moab. Ironically, the entire Parsha was actually told from the POV of Bilaam and Balak. We have not specifically seen the Jewish people until this point, which is part of where a lot of rabbis point to that, look, Moshe wrote the Torah with prophecy, because how could he have known what transpired between them? But now we're going to go back to where the Jewish people are. And there's a place called Shittim within the plains of Moab. And what's happening, part of the plan was they were going to send out, they were going to set up these like market stalls and da-da-da, and said, oh, look, our beautiful daughters have these things to sell you, once whatever, and oh, have some wine, have some whatever. Basically, we're going to try to seduce them. And part of the plan of seducing them was not just to seduce these men, but also to lead them to idolatry. Like, oh, you want to be my friend? Well, okay. Well, look, this is my little idol. The idol was called the Baal Par. It was considered like the worst, like the level, the manner of serving it was considered like the worst of all of them. And there's a lot of questions about, the Jewish people are finally about to enter the land of Israel, and after everything that's been, they should have been in a very good place at this point. But part of it is also, and some of this is a Chassidic explanation, is that they were kind of in a transition time. Because until now, all the years in the desert, they had the clouds, they had the well, they had the mud, everything, all their physical needs were taken care of. So there was no necessarily like physical desires as far as those things goes. You weren't into clothing, you weren't into food, you weren't into any of these things, because it was just a non-issue in the desert. Everything was kind of taken care of, and it was just not a thing. But now they're going into the land of Israel, which means that now this possibility for self-serving kind of sensual desires is becoming an option. So the opening of that led like to a very extreme result in this first kind of transition of this. So short story is 150,000 men end up worshiping this Baal Peor, and then God sends a plague to start wiping everybody out. And of course, there's all this crying and prayer, whatever. And Hashem tells Moshe, gather all the judges up, and you gotta weed out all the idolaters. And God helped to indicate where the idolaters were. And then you have this thing where you have the people of the tribe of Shimon. So the second tribe, they go to their leader, a prince among them, of them, and they're like, his name was Zimri, and they're, hey, like, we're all going to die, we're all going to die, what's going on here? So Zimri does something very bold. He takes a Midianite princess, her name is Cusby, and he takes her before Moshe, and he's like, what, is she forbidden to me, right? Is she forbidden to marry? You married someone from Midian, which is Zipporah's from Midian. You married someone from Midian. How can you speak out against? And then he goes to take her into his tent and to go and all that going on there. Now, his whole argument didn't necessarily make sense because he's accusing Moshe of marrying someone from Midian, and it was before the Torah was given. Also, it could be pretty much, we know that Yisro and his whole family converted, etc. We could know that Zipporah probably converted also after the Torah was given. And not just that, but there's a lot of elements of like, well, Moshe was considered on a higher level, and a Kohen, or Moshe was like a Kohen when he inaugurated the Mishkan. He's not supposed to marry a convert or something like that, or someone who was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at the time, when the Torah was given, the firstborns were supposed to be the Kohen, not Aaron and his sons. They hadn't gotten that yet. So there's a lot of details that basically Zimri was making this accusation that was wrong. And Moshe kind of froze at that moment. He wasn't necessarily sure what he was supposed to do, which is a whole other thing. Some of the explanation about that also is that because Moshe was being personally accused in the case, he couldn't stand as judge in the case also. But who did step up was his great nephew. His name is Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron. So ben Aaron of his son Aaron. And he goes up to Moshe and he's like, isn't he supposed to, this guy could be executed for what he did, the way this public display that he's made, etc. And Moshe's like, well, you've cast the judgment, you're so eager, whatever, it's up to you now to carry this out. So Pinchas takes his spear in hand and he kills both Zimri and Cusby. And then the Torah portion ends off that 24,000 people died in the plague. And actually next week's Torah portion is going to start off. Next week's Torah portion is Pinchas. So we find out what happened next after that. And that's the end of this week's Torah portion.